Okay, so the meeting is resumed and we are up to 11.4, the project update on Civic Whare Exhibition Centre and Museum. Mike and Graham?
Again, I'll just introduce the paper in terms of working through the gateway process for Te Manawa and the next step in that process. This paper, which Graham and Michael talked through in a little bit more detail, outlines the next step and the next gateway that we're working through, particularly around the two elements, one being the approval of the Te Manawa board to move forward, and the other being around the financial strategy update. So if I just talk about the financial strategy for a moment, a further report will come to council in mid-March once we've worked through the deliberations process for the long-term plan. However, at this point in time, everything is aligned with the report that went through last July in terms of ensuring that no more than 151 million is funded through ratepayers and the balance from other sources, non-ratepayer sources. So whilst we are seeing some changes in the funding environment with the change of government and therefore some changes in the mix of funding, we're still confident that the balance will be able to be received and be consistent with the July financial strategy report. So I'll hand over to Graham and Mike.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon. So just to give you an update on the Civic Whare Exhibition and Museum project, we've now completed all the developed design work. Through that process, we've been through very stringent value engineering process to ensure that before we move into the detailed design, that we're within the budget limit. The detailed design is now currently underway and expected at the end of May. And this paper outlines two major steps in the development, one being the commencement of the enabling works, which comprises service relocations, capping and services for the site setup, demolition of the existing floor pad on the corner of Willow and Hamilton Street, construction of excavation and a pile mat, temporary retention works and ground improvement works. We've always envisaged that the site would be worked in a sequential process. So at the moment we have the wrap piling machine underway on the library community centre. That work is expected to be completed by mid-March, at which time that pile rig will then move across to commence the wrap piles for the CWEM building. The second part of the report is to get there are a number of trades and building materials that we have to secure by way of deposit to ensure that we're on the production line. These include the timber components of the building, structural steel, lifts and facade work. The importance of engaging the facade manufacturers now is that they are involved in completing and working through with the architects on the final design of the fabrication of that part of the project. We're happy to take any questions around the process and the need to procure early procurement and early site works.
Thanks, Mike. And I think some So we went out and consulted with the public on Te Manawataki or Te Papa, and I think the questions were, did we do them as one project altogether? And part of the reasoning around that was that you could get considerable cost savings by doing that. Certainly a lot of the feedback that we got from the community was they wanted to see it as one project rather than a set of individual projects, partly because of Tauranga's history, that it never seemed to finish any of those other projects, was a consistent message that we got back. But importantly, that key cost saving of doing it all in one was a major part of the discussions that we had with the community. So with that in mind, and thinking about the financial strategy, which had some clear points of gateways, if you like, to go ahead with the different stages, it does make sense that while we've got the equipment on site, that we move, and I think I can remember having discussions with members of the community that you could then move that big pile driving cranes and equipment from one stage to the next stage, because it was quite big equipment that we would be bringing in, quite costly to actually remove. That was all part of that discussion. And of course, knowing the difficult geotech that Tauranga CBD in particular has, it makes sense to do that early rather than later, so that you can certainly make value engineering changes if we need to keep within the cost boundaries. So to me, that makes absolute sense. And then I think the second point around the early procurement of materials, watching 90 Devonport Road under construction and having gone down to the factory in Rotorua to see the way that those buildings are put together. I'm showing my age, but I would say a bit like a Meccano set. I guess today they would talk about a Lego set, but it is a completely different type of construction. And when you talk to the guys putting it together on the 90 Devonport site, the detailed design has to be done at a much earlier stage so that the pieces are cut and then fit in when they come on site. So that whole production line works differently from the traditional construction. And so getting in the line to have those supplies in the production line early and booked is absolutely critical to the timeline of delivering it. So I guess for me, whilst it's a slightly different process than perhaps we envisaged when we talked about those gateway decisions, it is in line with what we consulted the community on doing it as one project. And I think it is fiscally prudent to go ahead with these early works on both enabling and ordering the supply, the materials, early ordering the materials to help with the ongoing delivery and the cost containment of the project. So you know, I'm reasonably comfortable with it now, and knowing that the majority that prior to construction tenders being let, there will be another examination and definite decision. But we'll have a pretty good idea. Well, we'll have much more certainty around about 25 to 30% of the costs.
Absolutely. Around, and particularly around the ground conditions and the foundation requirements.
All of which could blow the costs quite considerably, as we've found in other parts of Te Papa. So that's where I am at the moment. Stephen.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, proceeding with the particularly the piling now and confirming the ground conditions will remove quite a considerable risk from the contracting process that would otherwise be built into the price that the contractor tenders. So not only will we be enjoying getting on with the job and having surety about materials supply, which is yet another risk that would otherwise be factored into the contracting. We are reducing our longer term risks with the project by the process. And I think in the context where we know on all information we have to date, we are heading towards managing within budget. We don't have the detailed designs and therefore costings yet, but all of the preliminary design work and the costings associated with that give us some assurance that we're going to pass the gateway test. So given that scenario, we will be in an unfortunate position not to take advantage of the potential benefits of these early works now. And on that basis, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thanks, Mike Graham. Yeah, support the previous comments made by Anne and Stephen. Just thinking about the value engineering, we've got to step through every design part of the design process through to from development and then now into detailed design, and refining those costs. I think when we were late last year looking at in that develop design phase, we're at about 306 million, and originally we were at 301, I think. Originally, are we back down to 301 or thereabouts?
We were on
303, sorry.
303.4. Went up to 306, but the 306 was to include the additional works for the art gallery. But in terms of the QS estimate for CWM, we're still sitting within the 126 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. It was just a clarification, Mike, in terms of the early procurement. I take it that occurs and then the costs for that are at an earlier point in time, as opposed to, fine, we are seeking early procurement, but the final cost is some months or next year or whatever. I'm just trying to get a bit more of a handle on that.
The costs will be based on a fixed contract. So that is the other benefit of it, is that you're locking in your contract price for those components. And also we'd only be paying the deposit on the procurement. So like a lot of the major costs will only come in for the early procurement of the materials into third quarter 25 and into 27, 28.
But your cost is secured.
But the
Your
cost
total
is secured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the benefit of doing it now. Okay. Anything further? So Stephen moved it. Shad seconded it. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Right, so that brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. And I'll ask Shad to close us with a karakia. Thank you.
Tēnā no tātou, kia koe rā Anne, tātou katoa ko huitahi nei, tēnā tātou. Nō reira, kia nui tātou. I te atua anei rā ōpona ngai nea tēnei kia koe anō I tēnei ata, ka tuku anō rā ngā whakamaimatinga whakawhetai kia koe. Nō reira, mana ki tia rā tātou, a te rā wiki pea, ka huitahi anō, ka te kōrero hia anō rā tātou, ai ngā kaupapa I ngā āhuatanga pāniki tēnei taone. Nō reira, te atua tēnei mā tēnei kia koe. Rōre ki te ronga tapu. Amen.
Very much. I declare the meeting closed.